All right, guys, we're doing live radar analysis of the storms that are currently going on up in Nebraska and Iowa right now. Currently, we have a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings in effect. A few storms here formed, one to the north of Omaha, one to the south of Omaha. Looks like it's going to split the Omaha area there. But the one to the north of Fremont there, Nebraska, actually looks like it has the look of a tornadic supercell. So let's zoom in on that storm. You can see north of Fremont, Nebraska here. And the reason that I think this storm looks a little bit better than the one to the south is because it has kind of this more hook shape to it that you can see right there. And that would mean that it could have a little bit more inflow with it. And with these storms today, there is going to be a tornado threat. It's just a matter of time before we start seeing that materialize. These storms have just now started to fire up and just now started to mature a little bit. Again, this storm just to the north of Fremont, Nebraska, kind of near the Nickerson, Nebraska area, south of Hooper along Highway 77 there in Nebraska. So let's go south and look at the other storm that also has a severe thunderstorm warning on it. Again, pretty large hail there with that storm north of Fremont as well. The storm to the south, a little bit less organized as far as the look of it, but it does have a pretty good environment to work with, better moisture down here to the south, better instability. And speaking of that, let's go over to the what the models are going to be looking like. This is the latest HRRR model. Bring this up real quick. It might take a second to load. And here's the latest HRRR model, and you can see as I move this forward through the afternoon, we start to get those more discrete kind of supercells there, and they move off to the east. They kind of go a little bit more linear as they move toward Des Moines, parts of central Iowa, and as they move off to the east there, like I said, they will become more of a damaging wind threat there with those. But look at those cells down to the south in Kansas. Those are kind of interesting a little bit later tonight. Those might be a little more supercellular there along that pseudo dry line from Kansas City back down to the southeast or southwest, I should say. Could even get a couple of storms there in Oklahoma, in the very northern fringe of Oklahoma. So we do have a long day ahead of us here as far as supercells. The tornado threat is a bit conditional. It's there for sure. Let's take a look at the meso analysis, and you can see plenty of wind shear here. We have 300 meters squared per second squared of storm relative helicity. And what storm relative helicity is a fancy way of saying wind shear. We have a lot of low-level turning of the winds with height here in this area, and that will cause these storms as they move into that favorable wind shear to rotate. As far as instability goes, you can see pretty high instability numbers here in parts of Kansas, eastern Kansas, up to 3,500 joules, even a little area of 4,500 joules per kilogram of CAPE, and that's kind of nosing up into this area that's seeing these storms right now. And that northern storm that looks the most impressive has a little bit less CAPE to work with, but still has that wind shear to work with, and I think that eventually these storms to the south will start to take over as the more dominant cells. But as of right now, you can see these northern storms are actually starting to get their act together, and that one north of Fremont now has a little bit of company here to the east. You can see north of Blair, a new storm has kind of fired up and become pretty strong there near Missouri Valley to the Blair area there. It's right on the Nebraska-Iowa border. And then you have this cell, of course, that is being warned for hail and damaging wind there north of Fremont. So those two storms are probably going to compete with each other for those atmospheric ingredients. And again, we're also watching these storms down to the south as well. And we just kind of analyzed the environment, and we could see that the better instability is kind of nosing into these southern storms. So I do have a hunch that eventually these southern cells are going to become the more dominant. And you can see we have a couple of storm chasers up here on these northern cells, but most of them are starting to drop toward these southern storms, which I think will definitely become more dominant, especially as they move up toward, say, the Red Oak area of Iowa there, and then eventually up toward Greenfield, Creston. And then we also will likely see, as the models were showing, those storms start to build down to the southwest through parts of northern Kansas, northeastern Kansas, eastern Kansas, perhaps all the way down into the Oklahoma border there. So right now, not a lot going on. We do have these severe thunderstorm warnings in effect. I'll kind of go over those real quick. This is a severe thunderstorm warning in effect until 3:30, and it is for southwestern Burke County in central Nebraska, Washington County in east central Nebraska, and Dodge County in Nebraska. This is for ping pong ball sized hail there with that storm. And train weather spotters did report 1-inch hail in Ames, Nebraska there with that storm. The southern storm is a severe thunderstorm warning in effect until 3:45. Northern Fremont County in southwestern Iowa, Mills County in southwestern Iowa, and southeastern Cass County in southeastern Nebraska. And this is for 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts and quarter-sized hail. That's radar indicated. So that northern storm, storm spotters have reported 1-inch hail with it. It doesn't surprise me. Those storms actually might be a little bit elevated, and what that means is that there might be a little bit of stable air further to the north, kind of at the surface, and most of the instability is confined above the surface. So what's going to happen is those storms are going to be less likely to produce a tornado because they can't get to that instability at the surface, and they're a little bit elevated up over the warm front. So the warm front is kind of sitting somewhere in this area, and all the instability is to the south of it here with this storm, and these storms are actually north of that better instability and thus elevated above that stable layer, and they will be a little bit less likely to produce a tornado because of that. So continuing to watch these, we do have a new warning now in effect with that northern storm and kind of that new storm that developed that I was talking about there near Blair, Nebraska. It is crossing into Iowa rather quickly. Let's go ahead and read the warning on this. This is a severe thunderstorm warning for south
New
central,
severe thunderstorm warning.
It is Monona County in west central Iowa, central Harrison County in southwestern Iowa, north central Washington County and east central Nebraska. This is until 3:45 for 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts and half dollar sized hail. That's radar indicated with that. I do expect these storms to become tornadic at some point. There is a tornado watch in effect here. You can see the yellow outline counties. And I'm not really sure what that second... Oh, okay, I see that now. That severe thunderstorm warning is actually up here outside of the tornado watch near Hardington, Nebraska. That's kind of moving up into the very southeastern tip of South Dakota and will eventually move up into southern Minnesota here. So that's just a little bit outside of our tornado watch here, new severe thunderstorm warning. And that is in effect until 3:30 for southern Cedar County there in Iowa. Or Nebraska, sorry. But that's outside of the tornado watch. I don't think that those storms are going to be a problem as far as tornadoes. The storm that I'm most concerned with tornado-wise is kind of this southern storm here near Malvern, Iowa, north of Nebraska City. Right now, it's not very organized, but I think as it moves up to the northeast, it will move into that better environment there and could potentially produce a tornado later on in its life cycle. But right now, things are kind of tame. You know, we got some hail falling here and there, maybe a couple of damaging wind gusts, but for right now, things are tame. But I do expect that this will start to ramp up here in the next 30 minutes or so. And you can see that storm there that I was just talking about looking a little bit better on that next scan. You can definitely see getting a little bit more laminar, a little bit more tight there on that gradient on the southern end. So that tells me that it may be starting to pull in a little bit of inflow here from the south Currently, its orientation, though, isn't super favorable for a tornado. More of a hail threat there with that right now. And again, that's moving over Interstate 29 here, south of Plattsmouth. It's a little south of Malvern right now, moving into the Malvern area, moving into the Tabor area there in Iowa. So it's currently moving out of Nebraska. A lot of these storms are moving pretty quickly out of Nebraska. I would even say that right now in Omaha, you're probably going to be missed by most of this. So if you're in Omaha, it looks like that. These storms are splitting you, a cluster to the south, a cluster to the north. And I think as that pushes off to the east, northeast, we're going to start to see that threat go down a lot for Omaha. But Des Moines later on, watch out. Give it 2-3 hours from now, you'll be dealing with this. And it will probably be more of a damaging wind threat once it reaches the Des Moines area. But if you're in Atlantic, Iowa, Red Oak, Iowa, Greenfield, Creston, Clarendon, Shenandoah, some of these towns are a little bit hard to pronounce. Harlan, I know Harlan just had the big tornado the other day, Friday. This isn't going to be anything like that, but just a little bit down the line here for some of these areas. I think this area right here in particular is going to have a heightened threat of seeing a couple of tornadoes over the next couple of hours. So definitely a heads up there if you live in any of those areas with this storm that's moving out of Nebraska City. Starting to look a little bit better on radar, and also does have that better instability as we were talking about earlier. Go ahead and bring that back up, actually. And this is a convective energy is what we're looking at here, so CATE values. This is, in layman's terms, the amount of heat energy that storms would have to work with to kind of suck into the base of the storm. And you can see we have, whenever you have numbers around 1,500 to 2,000, that's sufficient to get yourself a tornado. And I've even seen in some environments, if there's extreme shear, you don't really need much at all. You could have 250 to 500. If the shear is oriented just right, you could get strong tornadoes even in that. But we're dealing with 3,500 CAPE here, advecting up into northeastern Kansas. We kind of got this area of 1,500 CAPE nosing into that storm to the south of Nebraska City. That's probably quite substantial enough to get a tornado there. So that's why I think that area of southwestern Iowa is kind of the hot spot right now as far as getting a tornado. Strong tornado, it's unlikely, but there is a conditional threat that we could get a strong tornado out of this if everything were to line up just right. We do have that 1,500 CAPE there. Let's take a look at the wind shear. And the thing that I like to look at is the storm relative helicity. And this is basically your wind shear, but at the lowest level. So you can have wind shear up above that is sufficient for supercells, but it won't necessarily be able to translate to the ground. This is the shear closer to the ground that we're looking at. And whenever you have 200 plus meters squared per second squared of storm relative helicity, which we do right here, that's usually the number I look at and say we could get a tornado. 200 plus, and you can see we actually have 300 in areas to the north. And that's why I think that northern storm is able to sustain itself so well despite being in lower instability. Because like I was saying earlier, if you have more extreme shear, that can make up for a lack of instability. And I think that's kind of what we got going on there. I also like to look at these hodograph maps. And you can see whenever we have these big curves, these big looping hodographs that you can see kind of that blue area in the space between the hodograph. And that's the area that we're really looking at that has the highest potential to see a tornado. And I really like that area of southwestern Iowa as a pretty good environment for tornadoes. And we'll see how that, as we go forward, you can see that environment kind of stays about the same. And it starts to ramp up there in eastern Kansas a little bit later on. So we'll have to watch eastern Kansas later once those storms are able to fire up. And I think that'll be a little bit later on in the afternoon into the evening for that area. So let's go back to our radar here. And you can see That southern storm is starting to look a little bit more favorable, guys. So we're really going to have to keep our eye on this Tabor, Iowa storm. And then also, I don't want to completely forget about this storm, or these two storms, I should say, to the north here, around Missouri Valley, Iowa, around Blair, Nebraska, back toward areas north of Arlington, Nebraska. These two cells right here, how they interact with each other is going to be everything with whether or not they could produce a tornado. But you can see two distinct, very strong supercells here, definitely dropping large hail, could be a bit elevated, but we might see a storm merger happen with these, and how that plays out is going to be a big key factor in whether or not they can produce a tornado. Big hail, though, with that storm north of Arlington there. And as I put this in motion, you can see they're starting to kind of interact with each other. They may not fully merge with each other, but that storm out in front of the Fremont storm might actually really impede the storm behind it from being able to become surface-based. We'll see how that plays out. If one of these storms was going to produce a tornado, I think it would be the lead storm there near Blair, because it is out in front and has better access to that inflow. But we'll see how these two interact, and that's going to be, like I said, key in whether or not they can produce a tornado. They do have that look. They have that kind of curved look there, so we have to keep an eye on them as they move off to the northeast. And again, also paying attention to this storm to the south, a little bit less favorably oriented here. You really don't want the hook to be kind of facing to the northwest like this. You want this hook to kind of come down like this. So you'd want this storm to be kind of moving more east, which we would call a right turn. But right now, it's not doing that. So we'll have to monitor and see how that goes over the next several minutes. But these storms up here, like, they have a little bit better orientation with their hooks. You can see a little bit better look to them with those hooks. We'll have to continue to watch this. Let's go to velocity on these. See if we have any rotation at all. And there is a little bit of broad rotation with both of them. Definitely interesting there. And again, these storms are on the Iowa-Nebraska border, moving toward Woodbine. If you're in Woodbine, Iowa, that's kind of an area to watch. Missouri Valley, Iowa, Blair, Iowa, Arlington, points north of Arlington especially. Tacoma, Nebraska.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
And those new severe thunderstorm warnings are for those storms that are well up to the north in parts of southeastern South Dakota. That does include the city of Vermilion, South Dakota. That new severe thunderstorm warning.
New severe thunderstorm warning. New severe thunderstorm warning.
Okay, so I think they just reissued or cut back on a couple of these. So let's go through and read all of our warnings again. Okay, so this is a new severe thunderstorm warning. This is in effect for northeastern Fremont and Mills counties in Iowa until 3:45 p.m. Ping pong ball sized hail and 60-mile-per-hour winds. So this southern storm has been upgraded to ping pong ball sized hail. And let's go to this warning here as well. And this is a severe thunderstorm warning in effect until 3:45 for south central Monona County in west central Iowa, central Harrison County in southwestern Iowa, and north central Washington County in east central Nebraska. Again, that's until 3:45, and that is for 60-mile-per-hour wind and half-dollar-sized hail. Don't think they changed that warning at all. And then this storm, which looks like it has some significantly large hail in it, 2-inch hail radar indicated with this storm, and it says people and animals outdoors will be injured. So if you're in the path of this storm, which is in south central Burt, northwestern Washington, and northeastern Dodge counties, that's until 3:30. So let's zoom into that storm, because right now that's the most dangerous storm. And it actually does have quite an impressive hook on it. Let's see if there's any towns here. If you're in Herman, Nebraska, that's the area that you need to be very aware of this storm in. That's along U.S. Highway 75 there in Nebraska, north of Blair. And this actually does have quite an impressive hook on it here. So you can see very tight gradient between the extreme precipitation and no precipitation, and then you've got that hook that comes around, and where the tornado would sit is about right there if it were going to develop. And it does look very impressive here, guys. And they just issued a new warning there on that.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
And that's still for 2-inch hail, but they just extended it. I believe they just extended it time-wise. But we'll see if that updates. It's still saying it expires at 3:30, but I do think they extended that, actually. Very impressive looking set of storms here. The one north of Missouri Valley, and then the one moving up toward Herman, Nebraska. So if you're in Mondamin, Iowa, Herman, Nebraska right now, you're probably about to see some pretty large hail in those areas. Up to 2 inches in diameter. And right now, these two storms are the ones that I am most concerned with. We will keep an eye on that storm to the south. It's in a more favorable environment as far as heat energy, but these storms right here to the north of Missouri Valley, kind of on the Nebraska-Iowa border there north of Blair, Nebraska. Those two storms are very impressive as far as hail size. And you can see there, you get these blues showing up on the radar. That is an indicator that you're dealing with some large to very large hail, and it wouldn't surprise me if there was some baseball-sized hail even in that storm, and that's headed toward the Herman area. It's even got this classic kind of flying eagle look to it. Here on radar, you can see some meteorologists call this bat wings, and that is usually an indicator that you have a pretty powerful supercell. I bet that has some very large hail and some impressive structure with it as well, I would imagine. Again, we are continuing to keep an eye on these two storms especially. I do want to take a look at the velocity here with this. I suspect that they're a little bit elevated, and that's kind of showing up there on velocity. Not a big amount of rotation. Some broad rotation there with both of those storms. But I suspect that those storms are just a little bit too far north of the warm front, or at least kind of straddling that warm front. Now, actually, the storm to the south is starting to look
New severe thunderstorm warning.
especially as far as hail size. Even more impressive than the one up there to the north. Take a look at this one, guys. If you're in Malvern, Iowa, it looks like some pretty large hail is about to come through town there in Malvern. So let's see if they've updated. Oops, accidentally clicked on a Storm Chasers live stream there. It says 1.5 inch hail, but I bet they'll upgrade that because that ping pong ball sized hail and 60 mile per hour wind, I would imagine it's a little bit bigger than that there with that radar signature.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
Just to the south and west of Malvern, Iowa. So if you're in Malvern, Iowa, get ready. Pretty big hail likely with that. And we've kind of got a conga line of storm chasers here on this storm as well. You can see there along Highway 34 in Iowa. Lots of storm chasers on this storm. And I think that this one is probably the most likely to produce a tornado over the next hour. So if a storm is going to produce a tornado, it would be the storm that's near Malvern. But right now it's still kind of in the maturing phase of its life cycle and moving more into those favorable wind shear parameter spaces. Let's go back to the models. And you can see, again, this is one thing that I like to look at, this hodograph map. And you can see out ahead of that storm there near Malvern, we do have favorably looped hodographs. Whenever we're looking at hodographs, you want to look for basically these, they look like sickles, hockey sticks, you might call them. You know, whenever they're shaped in kind of that curved, big, large looping way, that's usually indicative of a lot of wind shear. And you can also kind of visualize that through this storm relative helicity. And this is a new update here. And you can see we've gone from 200 to 300, and now we have 300 to 400 meters squared per second squared. So that gives you the idea that, hey, the wind shear in southeastern Iowa and also in parts of northern and northwestern Missouri is really starting to increase. So any storm that can get into that and interact with that kind of wind shear, I do believe will have a chance to produce a tornado. And going back to the Cape here, that's also on the rise. We do have a little bit of capping issues right now with that storm near Malvern, and that might be why it's not completely blowing up, but it will be moving out of that capping over the next hour or so. So I think that storm is definitely the one that we want to watch closely. Let's look at the raw significant tornado numbers. Lagging a little bit behind there, but you can see 2 to 3 on the significant tornado parameter. That's very, very good number there. Anytime I see 2 or higher, I start to become concerned. Supercell composite, we're up to a 12, even a 16 down there along the Kansas and Oklahoma border. Just a couple of more things I like to look at. This is kind of a cheat code for tornadoes. Surface vorticity in the blue and the low-level instability in the red. Anytime you get those two overlapping with each other like they are here along that Iowa-Nebraska border, that's typically where you're going to see a more heightened chance of seeing a tornado. And we're definitely seeing that there along the Kansas-Nebraska border. And I really am becoming more concerned with this storm here near Malvern, Iowa. Malvern, Iowa, you are already probably experiencing some ping pong ball plus sized hail, and they just updated this warning. As I suspected, as I said earlier, it looked like it was going to be a little bit larger than ping pong balls, and we have a new severe thunderstorm warning until 3:45 for Mills County in Iowa, and this is for tennis ball sized hail and 70 mile per hour winds. People and animals outdoors will be injured. Expect hail damage to roofs, siding, windows, and vehicles. Expect considerable tree damage. Wind damage is also likely to mobile homes, roofs, and outbuildings. So not only are we dealing with tennis ball sized hail here in Malvern,
new severe thunderstorm
70
warning.
mile per hour wind gusts. So those tennis ball sized hailstones are being driven at 70 miles per hour. And that's going to cause significant tree damage. That's going to cause damage to your siding of your house. And it's going to be a big problem if you're in the path of that. And especially if you're in Malvern, you definitely want to be indoors seeking shelter for this. It's not a tornado, but you don't want to be outside during 70-mile-per-hour winds in tennis ball sized hail. That could easily beat you to death and beat your animals to death if they're outdoors as well. Very, very dangerous storm there. And it does look like it's starting to wind down a little bit, but Malvern got hit whenever it was at its peak. So I would suspect that if you're in Malvern, you definitely got in on some of that hail and wind. And here's another thing that's very concerning with this storm. You can see as it's cycling, we're starting to get this appendage coming down off the south end of it. And whenever you get that appendage, that hook-like appendage there with that, this is indicative of tornado genesis about to occur. Got lots of inflow here. And then you got the rain-loaded RFD coming down on the back there. So I think this storm is starting to go tornadic. It's at the very beginning phases there. So in Malvern, you just got the hail. Now the mesocyclone's going to come up over the town of Malvern, Iowa. So you just got the hail, and you're probably about to see that lowering. Once that hail stops, you'll get that quiet period. You've heard people say it gets quiet before a tornado. Well, that's because a lot of times whenever these storms are moving from the southwest to the northeast, you'll get that hail first, and then you'll get inside the inflow notch, and it'll get quiet, and then that's whenever the tornado will touch down. So whenever you've heard those kind of stories about that, that's kind of what happens there. You get inside this area here, this rain-free area of inflow right after the storm goes through. The storm's really loud. You got tennis ball-sized hail falling, 70-mile-per-hour winds, and then all of a sudden it's quiet, and you see that wall cloud, and that's kind of how that happens. And I think that's kind of a textbook case here happening in Malvern right now. Again, it is starting to get that look. I think that it could try to at least try to produce a tornado here with this first cycle. I won't forget these storms up to the north. Go take a quick look at those while we have a minute. And they have merged, it looks like. At least somewhat. And those are messy. I see the storm chasers that were on that are starting to abandon it. Elevated up there, definitely a hail risk. Don't want to let your guard down with it. Don't want to be outdoors. But as far as a tornado risk with that storm north of Blair, Nebraska, moving into Iowa, I think that the tornado risk is somewhat lowered there with those. At least compared to this Malvern storm, which I think is just now starting to show signs of going tornadic. You can see right here, this hook, it's what we're watching, and there it is, a new scan. That hook-like appendage is now right over the Malvern area. The hail core kind of shrinking a little bit. We'll go ahead and look over toward the velocity real quick and see if it's got any low-level rotation at all. Nothing super impressive right now. But again, that might just be the first cycle. And I think this thing will kind of ramp down a little bit and then ramp back up. That's kind of the nature of these supercell thunderstorms, is sometimes they will go through several cycles before they can actually put down a tornado. And that's probably what's happening right now there. Malvern, you just got pummeled by tennis ball-sized hail and 70-mile-per-hour winds. So hopefully everybody in Malvern was indoors for that. I would imagine that probably we'll be seeing pictures of that hail out of Malvern at some point. Somebody's probably got a picture of that. Again, here's the hail core right over the Highway 34 corridor there north of Malvern, and it has weakened just a little bit, so probably back down to that ping pong ball-sized hail. Was it tennis balls when it was over Malvern? Warning is still for tennis ball-sized hail and 70-mile-per-hour winds. But unless it ramps up again, right now it looks like it's kind of in a more of a weakening phase as of right now, but still has that hook appendage. Something that we want to keep an eye on there is this little appendage coming off of it. We'll keep monitoring that. So, while we wait for a new scan, let's kind of zoom all the way out. All right, and good thing we did.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
We have a new supercell that is formed down in Kansas. And a new tornado watch as well that has been issued for parts of Kansas. So let's bring that up here on the Storm Prediction Center page. This is a brand new tornado watch until 11 p.m. Central Time for parts of Kansas. You can see that here. Red box. It does not include Kansas City, but it does include St. Joseph, Kansas, Manhattan, Kansas, Topeka, Kansas, Emporia, Kansas, Chanute, Kansas, Wichita, Kansas. You are all in this tornado watch until 11 p.m. And these tornado watches, guys, I don't just look at, oh, is it a tornado watch? Is it a severe thunderstorm watch? You can also look down here at the hazards and the likelihood of these hazards. And you can see here, tornadoes, moderate. So moderate chance of tornadoes. EF2 plus tornadoes, low. So what that's basically saying is, yes, there could be a couple of tornadoes, but the chance of a strong tornado is low. It's not zero, but it's low. And you can see here, severe wind, high. So there's a high risk of damaging winds here with this tornado watch. 65 knot plus wind, so hurricane force winds, low. So could get a lot of high wind, but significantly high wind, probably a little less likely. Severe hail, high. So we could see 2-inch plus, or 1.5 inch plus hail, and then the 2-inch plus hail is moderate. So what I can take away from this is that the most significant threat is going to be hail with these. So you can see 2-inch plus hail, moderate, severe hail, high. There is a moderate for tornadoes as well, and a high on severe wind. And sometimes you'll see watches where it's moderate on tornadoes, moderate on EF2. And that's usually when you want to pay the most attention as far as tornado watches, is whenever you see that EF2 plus tornadoes category, say moderate or higher. If it's high, then that's typically what we would call a PDS tornado watch, a particularly dangerous situation tornado watch. But these watches, they have levels to them, and the warnings also have levels to them. So it's not as simple as I'm in a severe thunderstorm warning. The severe thunderstorm warning could be for 60-mile-per-hour wind. It could be for 70-mile-per-hour wind, or it could be for 80-mile-per-hour wind. And there's, big differences there. Whenever you've got 80-plus mile-per-hour wind, that is doing destruction to things. That's basically a low-end tornado or a low-end hurricane force wind. You could have 1-inch hail, 2-inch hail, 3-inch hail. When you get up to the 2-3-inch hail, we're talking about destructive level hail. And, of course, with tornado warnings, you could have a tornado warning for radar-indicated rotation. You could have a tornado warning for an observed tornado. And then there's also a tornado emergency, which is whenever there's a violent, large, destructive tornado moving into a populated area. So there are levels to watches. There are levels to warnings. Some people may not know that. And even with flood warnings, you can have a regular flash flood warning. You can have a river flood advisory, or you could have a flash flooding emergency. Flash flood emergency is typically the one you want to pay the most attention to. You want to pay attention to all of them, but whenever you're in a flash flood emergency, kind of like a tornado emergency. That means that significant flooding is happening in a very populated area. You may remember the flooding that happened in eastern Kentucky not too long ago. That's kind of on the level of a flash flood emergency type situation where homes are being swept away, high water rescues are going on, things of that nature. So there are levels to these things. It's not as simple as I'm in a flash flood warning, I'm in a tornado watch. There's definitely layers to it that a lot of people may not be aware of. So let's go down and look at this storm that just formed. Oh, no, we better not, because there's a tornado warning in effect here with that storm that I was just talking about earlier that I thought may go tornado. So it's Malvern, you're in the tornado warning, but it looks like the circulation has gone over town. So if you're in Malvern, you're good. Emerson, not so much. Emerson, Iowa, Hastings, Iowa, Red Oak, Iowa. There is a tornado warning effect here now. So let me go ahead and read off the tornado warning before I go into the velocities. It is radar indicated, so like I was saying earlier with tornado warnings, this is kind of the lowest level of tornado warning that you can be in. This is a tornado warning for northern Montgomery County in southwestern Iowa, northeastern Mills County in southwestern Iowa, and southeastern Pottawatomie County in southwestern Iowa until 4:15. Severe thunderstorm at 3:36, capable of producing a tornado, was located over Hastings, Iowa, or 15 miles west of Red Oak, moving northeast at 35 miles per hour. Hazards will be tornado and tennis ball-sized hail still. Flying debris will be dangerous to those caught without shelter. Mobile homes will be damaged or destroyed. Damage to roofs, windows, and vehicles will occur. Tree damage is likely. This dangerous storm will be near Emerson and Hastings around 3:40, Henderson around 3:50, and Elliott around 4:10. This is all in Iowa, by the way. Other locations impacted by this tornadic thunderstorm include Farm Creek Public Wildlife Area and Old Town Park. Move to a basement or an interior room on the lowest floor of a sturdy building. Avoid windows if you're outdoors in a mobile home or in a vehicle. Move to the closest substantial shelter and protect yourself from flying debris. So, again, guys, that's tornado warning. It's on the lowest level. It's radar indicated. I'm going to go over to the velocity real quick. And it does look like there's a lot of noise going on, but it's starting to organize itself. So if you're in Malvern, if you're in Red Oak, if you're in Hastings, Emerson area, anywhere along Highway 34 there, especially the intersection of Highway 34 and Highway 59 there near Emerson.
New tornado warning.
And there's the tornado warning. Just now popping up on the stream. But, yep. So that was that same storm that I've been saying. It's kind of moving into that better environment, and really that wind shear has ramped up here over the last hour or so. So I'm a little bit concerned. I do think that this storm will probably produce a tornado, at least a small tornado or a weak tornado over the next, say, 30 minutes to an hour, and will probably continue to cycle until it becomes more of a damaging wind threat. But right now it's a supercell. You can see all by itself. Nothing really obstructing it either. So this is definitely the storm that you want to pay the most attention to right now. Lots of hail. Hail core has actually spiked up again there. So probably going to be dealing with that tennis ball sized hail. Driven by 70 mile per hour winds and the threat of a tornado developing as well. I do want to, what I really want to do, I'm going to go double frame, so that I can monitor both the reflectivity and the velocity. And the what reflectivity is basically rain and hail. So anything precipitation wise, that's what you're looking at with reflectivity. When you're looking at velocity, you're looking at wind speed and direction. So one is precip, one is wind. There are other aspects to the radar that we can look at, but I'll kind of go over that as we need to look at it. Right now, there's no point in showing you it if I don't really have anything to show or give an example of. But right now I got double frame up. You can see on the left we have the rain and the hail, and on the right we have the wind speeds and the velocities and the direction of the wind. Once that loads, I'll kind of give you that, and you can see right here is the area of the storm that we're most concerned with. And basically these greens are winds that are coming out of one direction, coming into the storm, and the reds are the winds that are going away from the storm. So whenever you've got winds that are going away and toward the storm in close proximity to each other, that's what we call a velocity couplet, and that would indicate some level of rotation. In this case, pretty broad, not super tight right now. It doesn't look like there's a tornado on the ground, but certainly the storm is rotating, and that is why the National Weather Service has issued this tornado warning, because the storm is rotating enough to where it's like, hey, we need to start paying attention for the development of a tornado. So if you live in Red Oak, Hastings, definitely want to be in your tornado safe spot, basement, interior room, or closet, with as many walls between you and the outside as possible, away from windows, obviously. And you can see typically the reflectivity will be a little bit ahead of the velocity. And that's kind of what's going on right now. But on the right, again, is the velocity. On the left is the reflectivity. And we can also look at many different products. And there is one that I could look at here. Something that I like to use when I'm looking at hail. It's called the vertically integrated liquid. This is basically, how high up are these water droplets being wafted by the updraft. And the higher up, the cooler the temperature. So you kind of can put two and two together there and say, hey, if these water droplets are being held up in the air, very high up in the air for a long period of time, they're being given more time to conglomerate and freeze and form into hail. And you can see here pretty big signature there to the northeast of Malvern with that, and that would indicate your large hail, and that's called the vertically integrated liquid, and that's something
New severe thunderstorm warning.
whenever I am trying to see how big the hail is, or how much hail maybe is falling in a storm, especially when I'm storm chasing and I want to get into the big hail. New frame there on the velocity. It's still rotating. Nothing that screams tornado has developed, but we're just usually just one scan away from that changing. We'll see how that goes here. I do suspect this thing is going to try to produce a tornado several times. And we do have a couple of storm chasers here. The Ryan Hall team over here northeast of Malvern, and then Corey Gherkin is also east of Malvern there. Pretty much in perfect position to intercept that circulation. Excuse me, and he'll probably follow it off to the northeast as it goes. Textbook supercell though here. Absolutely textbook. And I really want to have my focus on that storm, or on this storm that we're looking at. I'm not seeing any other storms that are showing tornado potential. That storm down in Kansas is warned for 70-mile-per-hour wind and ping-pong ball-sized hail. That's for central Marshall County in Kansas until 4 p.m. But I will stay here with this storm, though. But just be aware, if you're in central Marshall County, Kansas, that storm is producing 70-mile-per-hour wind and ping-pong ball-sized hail. So those storms down in Kansas are starting to fire up now. And if you look all the way down the line there, all the way to Wichita, those storms are actually popping up. So we're going to have to continue to watch those pretty closely as well. Over the next couple of hours, I think that we'll start to see a tornado threat develop down there as well, but that'll be a little bit later.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
And those severe thunderstorm warnings that just got issued are actually in Pennsylvania.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
So I'm going to take off that double frame. We'll zoom out, and another severe thunderstorm warning, that time in Oklahoma. So we're really starting to get going here, guys, as far as the severe weather threat. We'll look at the one in Oklahoma first, since we're kind of closer to it. And yeah, these storms are going all the way down the dry line. It's kind of a pseudo dry line, more of a Pacific cold front. You can call it either or, really. But all the way down at here, this severe thunderstorm warning is well to the northwest of Oklahoma City. And my radar is going to be a little bit slow here, guys, so just kind of bear with me, but it will load up. And you can see there it is, north and east of Thomas, Oklahoma there. Really not moving into any populated areas. Going to kind of split Oakwood and Watonga there in Oklahoma. Not really a big deal. Probably just some small hail, but it could unzip. And you can see a couple of those storms also developing there even further south of that, down toward Altus, Oklahoma there. Again, my radar is being very slow and laggy, but you can kind of get the idea there to some degree. Really annoying. I'm just going to kind of let it catch up a little bit here. And while I do that, let's go over to the Storm Prediction Center website and go over a couple of things. So, a couple of things here. There is a mesoscale discussion in effect for these Oklahoma storms, and you can see isolated, widely scattered storms possible, posing at least some risk for hail. So, again, those storms we were just looking at in Oklahoma, they're along the dry line, will be capable of producing hail. They may not be particularly long-lived, says the Storm Prediction Center, so the need for a watch is not currently anticipated. Says deepening convection, including at least attempts at thunderstorm initiation, is underway near the dry line across western Oklahoma and northwestern Texas. However, mid and upper support for thunderstorm development appears likely to remain weak to negligible, while inhibition associated with warming elevated mixed layer air spreading east of the southern Rockies continues to increase. So the cap is kind of going to hold those down, in other words, in Oklahoma. So if you're in Oklahoma, you might get some small hail there, but overall, kind of negligible. Let's look at the convective outlook. The convective outlook here, You can see we have an enhanced risk of severe weather for parts of northeastern Kansas, northwestern Missouri, into southern and central Iowa. 5% tornado risk, 30 hatched wind risk, and 30 hatched hail risk. So they did upgrade the wind risk to a 30% hatched. I'll go ahead and read this. Here's the 20Z update, which is 3 p.m. Main concerns with this outlook are the extent and amplitude of tornado probabilities over the Iowa vicinity and marginal versus slight across the southern Great Plains. So basically what they're saying is they're not sure the extent and amplitude of the tornado probabilities in Iowa, how far they want to extend that east, because again, it is expected to become more of a damaging wind threat. And then another thing that they're kind of talking about here is should they extend the slight risk further down into Oklahoma for what we were kind of looking at there just a second ago. But it says here, scattered thunderstorms have developed across the mid-Missouri Valley after midday soundings from OAX/TOP sampled a mean mixing ratio near 10 grams per kilogram within the plume of around 60 surface dew points. Primary uncertainty is the degree of tornado potential as these storms spread into parts of southwestern and south-central Iowa. A couple of long-track supercells might evolve given favorable low to deep layer wind profile, but the relatively modest boundary layer moisture with potential for appreciable cold pools as convection consolidates lowers the confidence in sustaining a greater tornado threat. The northern extent of severe potential will continue to be modulated by weaker instability amid downstream convection, currently from Iowa into eastern South Dakota. Non-HRRR guidance is fairly insistent on isolated to scattered thunderstorms along the dry line south of its triple point intersection with the surface cold front pushing southeast to central Kansas across western portions of Texas and Oklahoma. The environment will be supportive of isolated large hail and localized severe wind gusts through about dusk. Have opted to bring the slight risk to the agitated cumulus field in western Oklahoma and leave marginal in effect further south. So really a lot of words to just say, hey, there's a tornado risk. We don't know how big the tornado risk is going to be. It looks like mostly a damaging wind and large hail threat in a nutshell. And Radar Omega is still not wanting to load correctly. But I'll try to get over here to the Pennsylvania severe thunderstorm warning for you. And it looks like that's in effect for the Scranton area, just to the northeast. We'll get in here, guys, and it'll eventually load. I have confidence in it. So let's move over to the radar here. And there you go. Severe thunderstorm warning, and yes, it does include the northeastern suburbs of Scranton, Pennsylvania. Severe thunderstorm warning, and I am going to botch these county names. I'm just going to, or at least this one, Lackawanna County in northeastern Pennsylvania. Lackawanna, one of the two, in west central Wayne County in northeastern Pennsylvania until 5:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Severe thunderstorm is located over Dixon City or near Scranton, moving northeast at 25 miles per hour, 60 mile per hour wind, and quarter-sized hail with that. I'm not sure why the radar is being so ridiculous right now. Let's go over to the tornado warning again. Again, I apologize for how slow this is being, but we'll get there. As long as we don't have to move halfway across the country, I guess we'll be okay. Okay. really everything's loading okay. It just seems like the terrain feature doesn't want to load. It just kind of stay out, and it does here for this tornado warning at least. So I guess that's what's important. As long as it loads for the tornado warning. All right, so looking at this storm here north of Red Oak that is tornado warned in Iowa, we are running into a couple of issues here because we have this little shower feature here to the south trying to impede the inflow of this storm. So this is probably going to cause issues.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
Hopefully that's not across the country. It's in Iowa, okay. So yeah, this storm here in Iowa has that little shower. Probably going to impede the tornado threat there, at least in the short term. And right now, guys, I'm not seeing a huge tornado threat with anything today. In my opinion, all of these storms have something or another keeping them from producing a tornado right now. That doesn't mean that later on down in eastern Kansas we won't get something. That doesn't mean that even these storms, which are moving into fairly favorable wind shear, won't do something. But right now, at least for the next 10-15 minutes, I'm not seeing anything that is imminently going to produce a tornado, despite the fact that this storm that we're looking at is actually tornado warned. There are three storm chasers on it. If there was a tornado, it would be observed by now if there were one. But we'll go over to the velocity on it and see kind of what that looks like. There's a little bit of something there. A little bit of rotation. It's not super tight, but it's there. Enough to warrant that tornado warning, but they did just extend a severe thunderstorm warning out in front of it, which tells me maybe they're not going to issue a new tornado warning now. They're probably going to wait for that cell merger to occur, kind of see what the storm looks like after that. And here's that new severe thunderstorm warning. And that's in effect for Cass County in southwestern Iowa and northwestern Adams County until 4:45. Ping pong ball sized hail and 60-mile-per-hour wind. Locations impacted include Atlantic, Griswold, Lewis, Massena, Cumberland, Weota.
New severe thunderstorm
Cold
warning.
Spring State Park, Griswold Park, and Atlantic Municipal Airport. Interstate 80 near mile marker 65. And that's the same warning just popped up that I'm reading right now. And no tornado possible tag on it either. So that's even more reason for me to believe that the National Weather Service is looking at this and saying it tried, but it didn't make it. So we'll see if it can do this cell merger and maybe give it another go. We'll see. Impressive super.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
And that is in Kansas. Go ahead and zoom out a little bit here. And I am somewhat interested in that storm there in northeastern Kansas as well. Got to keep an eye on that. We'll eventually
New
move
severe
towards St.
thunderstorm warning.
Joseph. And we got a lot of severe thunderstorm warnings being issued. And a lot of those are kind of clustered up in that first little cluster of storms we were looking at right here. Got a lot of severe thunderstorm warnings clustered up there north of Omaha. Kind of just a mess of cell mergers going on up there. And then we got
New severe thunderstorm warning.
this more tornadic storm here. And those are in Oklahoma, the new severe thunderstorm warning that you just heard. So things are really ramped up right now as far as severe thunderstorms. We do have, again, 2 tornado watches in effect. One up here for Iowa, and one as well down for Kansas. Those are in the yellow outline counties you see. The tornado watch in Kansas is in effect until 11 p.m. The tornado watch for Iowa and Nebraska is in effect until 11 p.m. as well. So both of these are in effect until 11. So about 11 o'clock, I would say, is when the severe weather threat will start to die down. I actually think it'll be a little earlier than 11, but I would say more around sunset, when the storms start to lose that kind of daytime heating, especially since we're dealing with new arriving moisture. If we had moisture in place last night, and see, guys, that's the thing, whenever there's so much that goes into forecasting, but whenever you have moisture that's been around for a while, it's higher quality moisture. So if moisture arrives the day before a severe weather event, kind of sits around, and then the next day the system comes in and can kind of interact with that moisture that's been there for a while, that's more high quality. Typically, storms will have a better time producing tornadoes, producing severe weather. Today, this moisture actually just arrived in time, like an hour before the storms fired up. And that's less deep, less quality moisture. And sometimes storms will struggle whenever the moisture arrives late like that. And that's kind of what's going on right now with these storms. I think that's one of the main limiting factors. Still got this tornado warning here for 11 more minutes for Red Oak area. Mostly areas north of Red Oak. And you can see that cell to the south is starting to get a little bit stronger. And then there's even another one down here that's going to also merge. So I think this one's going to kind of have a little bit of a hard time here, especially because here's your main parent supercell right here. This would be your tornado producer. If not, for this supercell that is just developed to the south of it, impeding it. And then we may even start to deal with this cell as well, this little shower that just popped up. So we might have several attempts before we actually get anything significant with this storm. We'll have to see. Let's go down here and look at this storm in Kansas, because it actually looks quite impressive. Hopefully switching radars isn't too much of an ask for Radar Omega here. And yeah, look at that guy. There's a new storm of concern here, moving toward the Centralia, Kansas area, up towards Seneca as well.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
That might be for the storm we're looking at here. No, that's actually in Oklahoma. But this severe thunderstorm warning is for western Namaha County in northeastern Kansas, east central Marshall County in northeastern Kansas until 4:30. 20-mile-per-hour wind with that. So 70-mile-per-hour wind is starting to get up in that threshold where it can become at least considerable damage. Not quite destructive, but considerable. Let's go down here to Oklahoma. And we actually do have some of these storms trying to fire up down on the dry line, which is actually surprising because a lot of the models were not firing storms up all the way down here. But really, like the SPC was saying, these storms don't look like they're going to sustain themselves very well. They look very weak. They're there. They're producing hail here. But I wouldn't bet money on them sustaining themselves for very much longer. Whereas the forcing is a little bit better up here.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
Kansas and Iowa and Missouri. And there's another new severe thunderstorm warning in Kansas. Yep, I can see that now. Yep, the forcing is just a little bit more favorable up here, closer to that upper level trough ejection and the surface low. And we can go look at that real quick. Kind of show you what I'm talking about. Whenever I say upper level trough ejection, some people might be like, huh? Upper, huh? But right here, this is the meso-analysis for the entire United States. And basically when I say upper level trough ejection, I'm talking about the jet stream. And here's your jet stream. Any of these areas of blue here. And you can see that the numbers are quite high up here in Iowa, Nebraska, and northern Kansas. And then look down here into Oklahoma. There's really nothing going on. No jet stream energy reaching down here. So whenever I say that upper level trough ejection, that's what I'm talking about. Those jet stream winds are a little bit stronger, and that's your forcing. That's what carries your thunderstorms. That's what pushes the air up. And if you want to get a little more technical with it, there's more diffluence up here to the north, which is the spreading apart of the winds in the upper levels. So the winds are kind of up here in South Dakota coming out of the southwest, but down here in Kansas, they're coming out of the due west. And that spreading, if you can imagine, if you're in a bathtub or in a swimming pool and you spread your arms apart and you get that water to rise in the middle, that's kind of what's happening. The atmosphere is a lot like water. So whenever you have the wind spreading apart like that, you get that rising motion. You know, it wants to fill that void. And that's when you get your thunderstorm development. And that's kind of what's happening here. Not a big time diffluent flow. It's not the strongest I've ever seen. The trough is kind of strung out a little more zonal. Doesn't have like a much curvature to it. But there are little subtle short waves here. And I'll do more educational videos on some of this stuff I'm saying. But kind of, it's a lower end setup. It doesn't look insanely favorable for strong tornadoes. Not like what we were dealing with on Friday and Saturday. But I'm looking at this storm here in Kansas, and then I also want to go up to the Iowa storm for you guys. So let's go back to radar. This is the one in Kansas, kind of moving up toward the Centralia or Centralia area. I know the town here in Illinois, we call it Centralia. Could very well be pronounced Centralia here in Kansas. I'm not sure. But a little bit of maybe some ping pong ball or greater sized hail moving into that area. And then I want to go up to the Iowa storm. Still has a tornado warning on it, but that is about to expire here in 4 minutes. And it doesn't look like they're going to reissue it, or they would have already, I would imagine. To it here. Oh, and right around Elliott, Iowa, starting to see that hail core move over. Really messy here with the storm merger that's happening. So, like I was saying earlier, in the short term, this thing really doesn't look like it has potential to produce a tornado, but in the longer term, perhaps. Sometimes we have both constructive and destructive storm mergers. Sometimes a storm merger can completely cause a storm to never be able to produce a tornado, and sometimes a storm merger can actually aid in the tornado genesis process, but we'll have to see exactly what kind of storm merger we're dealing with here. But for right now, it's destructive. Put that in motion and kind of see how that's playing out there, maybe. Radar Omega has not wanted to cooperate today. Okay. So yeah, there's a chance that this could be a constructive cell merger. We'll have to watch it, see how it goes, but right now, everything pretty tame.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
And that's in Iowa, so already kind of seeing that. And you can see, I'll zoom out just a bit to where you can see the whole tornado watch area. These chaser icons are a little bit annoying. But you can see tornado watch in effect for all of southeastern Iowa. It does include Des Moines. I don't think that the tornado watch will be in effect much longer in Nebraska. But that very southeastern corner of Nebraska still dealing with some severe weather. But the Omaha area, I would say you're probably in the clear there. Lincoln, Nebraska, you're in the clear. Mostly becoming more of an Iowa issue at this point. And then northeastern and eastern Kansas. I do expect Kansas City to be in the tornado watch at some point. But maybe not, though. Maybe the storms won't make it that far. Maybe they'll weaken before they get there. But definitely Manhattan, Topeka, down to Wichita. You want to be weather aware in those areas, because I think that round of storms is probably going to be the most concerning, unless that storm in Iowa can really get its act together. But I have my doubts. We'll see. Got a lot of lightning on it. All these storms have a tremendous amount of lightning. Starting to see a big uptick there. So maybe that merger that's happening up here with this Iowa storm is going to actually be constructive. We'll see. Right now, it's a complete and utter mess. Looks like crap. Go over back to the models. I do want to kind of look at the... This is another thing we look at here. This is the low-level jet, or the winds just above the surface. And you can see 35 knot low-level jet. That's like the very low end of what gets it done for a tornado threat. That is expected to increase to maybe around 40 knots here within the next couple of hours, according to the RAP analysis. But even 40 knots, you really want to see that 50 plus knot low-level jet to get stronger tornadoes. But we do have the 30 knot low-level jet extending all the way down through Kansas. And then the nose of that up in the Des Moines area at about 35 knots. So really not super impressive. Let's go back to the significant tornado parameters. And you can see little bullseye there over southeastern Iowa, as well as a little bullseye there on the Kansas-Oklahoma border there, mostly on the Kansas side, so close to Wichita. We'll have to watch that area later tonight. Let's look at the violent tornado parameter, and that's a little behind, so we don't really want to look at that. That has that over Nebraska, and the threat has pretty much exited that area. Again, some of these parameters are a little bit behind. You'll be able to tell just by where the storms are in comparison to where it's showing the parameter space. Let's look at some of this chance of an EF2 plus tornado. Again, that's behind. A lot of these are behind right now. It's Supercell Composite's pretty well caught up. You can see a 12 there over southwestern Iowa. I don't know if I keep saying southeastern, I mean southwestern. And then there's an area of 16 there along the Kansas-Oklahoma border. Let's look at the visible satellite. And you can see sun is out over from Des Moines south in Iowa. Sun is out over eastern Kansas, so definitely interested in that initiation there in Kansas from Topeka back down through Wichita. Definitely want to keep our eye on that. Let's zoom into that sector there and kind of look at that. You can see that. Look at that sun just baking the atmosphere there in parts of Kansas, and that's resulted in an area of 5,000 Cape, guys. 5,000 Cape is on the border of extreme instability. So definitely going to watch that. If a storm can really get going, the only problem with that area down there in Kansas is that the wind shear is pretty negligible for the most part, 40 knots of bulk shear. Favorable for a supercell, but a tornado threat, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot of different things. I mean, you would need a somewhat of a low pressure system to form there. You want to hear something crazy? 94 degrees on the Kansas-Oklahoma border behind the dry line. That's a dry heat. It's not humid over there, but still 94 degrees. Wow. Yeah. Actually, an observation there on one of the stations, 96 degrees in southern Kansas. 94 there in Oklahoma. A couple of 92s there in the Texas Panhandle. And that's pretty well above average for this time of year. Which is probably why you're seeing 5,000 Cape over here. That's more of a summertime kind of Cape profile. Summertime in like Illinois. We'll go back to the radar real quick. And here's this storm merger that occurred, and it's starting to look like a little more organized here. Might want to watch this south side of the storm. Really going to want to watch because there's a new updraft, it looks like. We got some pretty large hail. Of course, it would update when I'm trying to draw. Some pretty large hail right here. And I'm starting to become concerned again for another try at a tornado. And let's look at the warning here. If you read the warning for this area until 4:45 for northeastern Montgomery and southeastern Pottawatomie County in southwestern Iowa, it says here 2-inch hail and 60-mile-per-hour wind. So that's ping pong ball size plus sized hail. And we're starting to get that hook action back now that cell merger has kind of almost completed itself. Let's go to the velocity scan. And yeah, I think it's going to try to produce a tornado again. So it wouldn't surprise me to see a tornado warning issued within the next 10 to 15 minutes on this, if that trend continues. And I think this storm over the next hour or two, like I was saying earlier, is going to have the highest chance of producing a tornado out of the entire event. I mean, the storms down in Kansas could do it too later, but the only problem, like I was saying, was that the wind shear is just not there. It's really just not there. This particular supercell, though, if it continues to hold together, and I do believe it will, is going to be going into Des Moines. Directly into Des Moines, probably, by my estimation. Let's kind of put that in motion and see. Well, nope. No, it's going to go a little south. Probably a little south of Des Moines. So if you're on the south side of Des Moines, that's probably going to head into that area. Say the Norwalk area, Carlisle, south suburbs, Indianola, Winterset, Greenfield. Winterset actually had that EF3 tornado a couple of years back. And this storm's moving right toward Winterset. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Right now it's starting to get that look again. Grant, Iowa, big hail happening there right now. And you can kind of see, here's the hook area, here's the inflow that we're looking at. Right there. Every time I go to draw, it updates. But yeah, pretty big hail starting to fall there near Grant, Iowa. And it actually just got a little bit bigger there with that last frame. You can see Corey Gherkin there, the storm chaser, trying to keep up with it on 34. It's kind of getting away from him, though. Willard Sharp, storm chaser, is right in it. We'll see over the next couple frames what this kind of looks like. I'll go back to the velocity real quick. I think it's going to try to produce a tornado again. Yep, that inflow area is really starting to increase. I think it's going to give another attempt. That doesn't mean that it will produce a tornado, but we'll see. I do think it's going to go one more time. And eventually these storms are actually going to start turning more southeast, I think. And yep, here comes Brandon Kopic and Vince Welty up here. They bailed on their storms, and they're trying to hightail it to these ones to the south. Listening to their stream earlier, they were debating on whether they should go south. And they finally have made that decision. Whether they'll make it or not. Well, they're on I-80, so they probably will.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
That's in Iowa as well. Oops. Yeah, this storm is starting to look a lot more impressive. Here's a product I like to use called Echo Tops, and this will kind of give you an idea of how tall the storm is up in the air. And this storm has reached 45,000 feet, so that's pretty impressive. That's a pretty tall storm. So that cell merger has happened now. And it may attempt a tornado again here pretty soon. Right now, it's just a mondo hailstorm moving toward Messina, Iowa. Messina. There's a new frame on velocity. It's really starting to look like it's rotating a little bit. It's pretty broad, but it's starting to really ramp up that inflow area. Just going to kind of watch and see what this does. Let's go back over to the models and see if anything has changed here. No, if they haven't updated anything. Or not the models, but the meso analysis here. And here, this is kind of a little, you can see this a little bit better. The blue areas, that's the jet stream. And where you have more jet stream energy, you're going to have more storms. So notice how in the blue areas, we're getting these storms over in Iowa. The more within the nose of that jet streak there, which 70 knot jet streak, not bad. Pretty strong upper level jet stream there. But to the south here across Oklahoma, where you're getting this kind of scattered pulse development, you can see we have a lot less forcing with that. A lot more shear up to the north. A lot better low level shear too. And that is actually expected to increase, and we'll see. We'll see if the Rap's right about that. If we can get 500 over Des Moines as these storms start to approach that area, then we might be talking about a more substantial tornado threat over the next hour or two. Gonna want to keep an eye on this one particular storm, really, above all. I mean, there's still a couple of mergers that still probably need to go on before we start to see more significant development here. Hold on a second. Go back to the radar. You can see that new cell there near Red Oak is going to kind of advect up into this storm, as well as this now that just developed. Really, just these mergers are really what's killing this, which is a good thing, but that's kind of what's messing with the ability for it to produce a tornado. Oh, excuse me.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
All right, guys. Quick little break there, but we're back. Look at this hail core here with the storm. Very impressive. Saying 2-inch hail here with the warning. I have a feeling that that's probably a little bit bigger than that. And again, guys, with hail, 2 inches is a lot. Anything above 2-inch hail is significant. So if you're here south of Massena or Massena, Iowa, you're probably dealing with this large hail. It's eventually going to move up toward the Fontanelle, Greenfield area, Orient, Iowa area as well. Highway 92, Highway 148, N61 road there, Highway 25. Any of these areas, if you're traveling on, could be dealing with large to very large hail, and even the chance that this thing tries to spin up a tornado. But we really we got to see how these mergers really start to work out.
New severe thunderstorm warning. New tornado warning.
All right, guys. We do have a new tornado warning, and it's in Kansas. And I kind of suspected that these storms down in Kansas, and these are kind of further north in Kansas where that more favorable wind shear is. And this is going to include Frankfort, Kansas, also moving towards Centralia, Kansas again. So you just had that storm move off to the north of you there. Another one moving in. This one is rotating a little bit. Let's look at the velocity and see what we're looking at here. Really disorganized. Folks at the National Weather Service are the experts, but I don't see any rotation that would warrant any concern currently. We'll see how it develops over the next couple of frames, but right now, I mean, there's a couple of little loose areas that I would say are rotating right here near Frankfort and here north of Frankfort. I mean, you could say those are velocity couplets. This is probably a precautionary warning, but for the most part, you know, I don't think there's a tornado there on the ground.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
By any means. So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll stay here with this tornado warning. It's in effect for Frankfort, Kansas. we'll see how it develops. We'll see if it starts to rotate a little more. And here's what prompted this tornado warning, because I was kind of wondering, looking at radar. It says here the source is radar indicated rotation 1, which I don't see, but at 4:30, which was 8 minutes ago, emergency management reported a developing wall cloud and funnel cloud. And the thing with these emergency management reports is that these emergency managers, God bless them, are not typically trained weather spotters or anything like that. So they could see a lower cloud, they could see scud cloud, and they could say that's a developing wall cloud or a funnel cloud. And again, they don't mean any harm, but to me, just looking at this storm on radar, and again, I'm not there to say whether or not it is a funnel cloud or it is a wall cloud. You would have to see visible rotation with it. We'll see how it develops. There is an area of broad rotation on radar, very broad, not tight at all, not concerning immediately, but that's why they issued this tornado warning, was for that emergency management report of a wall cloud and a funnel cloud, which those are two different things. A wall cloud is the predecessor, or the precursor, I should say, to a funnel cloud. Wall cloud comes first, and then you'll get a funnel cloud out of that lowering, and then typically a tornado will develop after that. We'll see, though. Emergency management reported a funnel cloud with this.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
Near Frankfort, Kansas. So we'll just take their word for it and say that there is a funnel cloud. And if you're in Frankfort, just go to your shelter, I guess, for the next 5 or 10 minutes. I'm not seeing much here. Just my personal opinion. A little bit of rotation there south of Frankfort. We'll see if that tightens up. I could be dead wrong, but just in my opinion, it doesn't look super impressive. Sometimes the radar won't look impressive and there can be a brief touchdown. And the tornado happens between radar frames, and the radar doesn't necessarily see it, but there's another frame, and again, just doesn't look like anything's on the ground, or anything is even really worth putting a tornado warning out for. But nonetheless, there is a tornado warning there. And look, there's another tornado warning. And this one is just
New
to the
tornado
south,
warning.
near Westmoreland. And this one looks like there's a tornado. Guys, so if you're in Westmoreland, I would be in my tornado shelter, because that right there is a signature of a tornado on the ground. I would say that's potentially on the ground, if not very close there, just outside of Westmoreland, especially to the west of Westmoreland. So that right there, classic reds against greens, gate to gate, shear marker there. That is a more indicative of a tornado there. So we do have a storm chaser here, very close. Very close to that. We'll see. Looks like it could be rain wrapped if it is there. We'll go back to reflectivity real quick. Oh no, I don't know. That's a strange spot for there to be a tornado on that supercell, but we could just be a little bit close to the radar here, which I believe we are. Oh yeah, that's a tornado, guys. That's a bona fide tornado there, just to the west of Westmoreland, Kansas. Bigelow Road, Flush Road, right along those two areas. Let's zoom in and see if we can get that road there. Westmoreland Road, Campbell Street. If you're between Bigelow Road and Westmoreland Road / Campbell Street, just to the west of Westmoreland, that's where this tornado appears to be on the ground. Again, this radar tilts a little bit up, so it could be maybe not dead on to where it is, but that is certainly a tornado signature if I've seen one, at least as far as velocity. Let's go to the correlation coefficient. And hopefully there's not a tornado, but if there is and it's lofting debris, then I'll be able to... I can't say for sure as far as the debris, so I won't. But as far as velocity signatures go, when you've got this red and this yellow next to these two shades of green here, that indicates very strong rotation there with that. And that's right next to each other, very tightly wound. Pretty small tornado, though. Very small tornado, but I wouldn't be surprised if somebody is observing that. Yep, it is now an observed tornado. So emergency management confirmed this tornado. And like I said earlier, sometimes they can be wrong, but I think in this case, when we have the radar signature with what it is, looks like a tornado on the ground. I mean, I would bet that there's a tornado on the ground here in Westmoreland. So especially the north side of Westmoreland here, Walnut Street, North 1st Street, North 2nd Street, North 3rd, 4th, North 5th Street, Scott Drive, Campbell Street, Westmoreland Road, moving toward Highway 99 there, north of Westmoreland. Yeah, anywhere in Westmoreland, but especially on that north side of Westmoreland. Very small town here in Kansas. Looks like there is a tornado on the ground. Looks like it's been on the ground for a decent amount of time. Continues to look like it's on the ground there. So first tornado of the day is in Kansas, in Westmoreland, Kansas. And this is an observed tornado, guys. And it looks like on that last frame, it has weakened a little bit. Still strong rotation, but not. Probably starting to lift there on the north side of Westmoreland. We'll see. We'll keep an eye on it. But that was definitely a tornado there with that storm that touched down just west of Westmoreland and then moved through the northwest side and the northern side of town. So it would not surprise me if we start to get damage reports out of Westmoreland. Let's see if we can get a
New severe thunderstorm warning.
get a debris signature that's a little more for sure. See, it's really hard with all this noise. I mean, you could say, hey, there's a drop right there, maybe. But it's really not one of those where you're for sure about it. Let's put it in motion here. Let's see if I can catch anything. I can't say for sure. I'm not seeing... I'm a little more confident in that frame where you got this area of blues showing up. And I know you're seeing a lot. Like, that's the thing, though. There's a lot of blue showing up. But that area right there of blue actually lines up with the rotation. And there is a possibility that we're seeing, parts of some buildings, parts of some trees or something flying around up in the air with that. And this is correlation coefficient. It basically... separates what is rain and hail and hydrometeors from things like pieces of buildings, debris. And I think that we are actually seeing that right there. That looks like a bit that Right there is a debris signature with the correlation coefficient. Let's go back to the velocity. See if we have a tornado on the ground still via the velocity signature, and yes, we do. Guys, I think this thing is still on the ground here to the northeast now of Westmoreland. So, just went through the north side of town. What a strange tornado, too. Like, just the area of the storm that it developed on there. So it's right here on this part of the storm. That's an odd place
New severe thunderstorm warning.
for the tornado to form there on that storm. Seen crazier things, but yep. See that right there? That might even be a debris signature there on a reflectivity right there. Yeah. I think that might actually be a tornado right there, guys. That debris signature on reflectivity. What a strange place for the tornado to develop. Truly. And I think that pretty well lines up with our correlation debris ball there. Let's take a look. Right there is where the reflectivity was showing that. And yeah, it lines up perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and say that is a radar confirmed tornado as well as emergency management confirmed. Let's see if it still says emergency management confirmed. Tornado is on the ground though. And it may be trying to weaken now. Still a little bit of a couplet there, not super strong anymore. But wow. Definitely had a tornado just go through Westmoreland, Kansas. Tornado number 1 of the day. Excuse me. They still have that tornado warning up there for the
New severe thunderstorm warning.
Kansas storm. But let's go up into Iowa. Yeah, I definitely want to stay here with this storm. I'm not sure if Aaron J. Jack here. I'll look at his stream real quick. If he's going into Westmoreland. May not even be streaming, to be honest. It's not looking promising. But yeah, there continues to be a tornado signature there. Really. Tornado warning was reissued, continues to be observed. Still emergency management confirmed, but I would say also radar confirmed as far as that debris signature. Wow. So yeah, at least a small tornado just went through Westmoreland, Kansas. And continues off to the east into a very rural area, thankfully. But what an unfortunate thing there for such a small town in the middle of nothing to be hit by that really quick tornado. It's very strange how that happened. And it still continues to look like it could be on the ground. Could be lifting at this point, but if there were a tornado, it's right there where I just circled, just to the east of Westmoreland, in a very rural area there, right along Dutch Hollow Road, and headed toward Clear Creek Road, White Eagle Road. Again, kind of in that rural area there east of Westmoreland. Yeah, that definitely was a tornado on the ground, though. Still not sure why they have this tornado warning up here. I'll go look at it and now I see why. Starting to look a little bit better there south of Vermilion. So we'll, considering what just happened,
New severe thunderstorm
south,
warning.
we will have to continue to watch this. See if that starts to spin up a little bit better. And you can see we have these kind of higher inbound winds with these outbounds here kind of next to each other. These are winds that are kind of going in. These are winds that are moving out. And that is a broad area of rotation there, although it's really disorganized in my opinion. It's stronger than it was earlier when they had first issued it for the wall cloud report from emergency management. Looks like that Westmoreland tornado is somewhat lifted, I would say. Could recycle. Keep an eye on it. Do want to kind of take a look at all these little storms here. We do have a little area of rotation there near Stella, Nebraska. Little rotation couple there. Probably a little burst of rear flank winds with that. Let's see if that warning has any tornado possible tag on it. It does not. We'll look at it from a closer radar. Yeah, there is a little bit of rotation there. So just to the northwest of Stella, Nebraska. Right here, this little area of rotation could warrant a tornado warning. Certainly warrants a tornado warning more than the one that we have there near Frankfort. Well, again, they probably both need a tornado warning. Precautionary for both of them. Go up to the north here and look at our big storm that every storm chaser is on right now. Kind of see what it looks like. Well, there's a little bit of rotation there, and you can definitely start to see a more clear area of inflow starting to
New severe thunderstorm warning.
develop there. And then you have a couple of areas of outflow. And you just got to kind of watch like maybe little areas like that. Not too impressive. It's the strongest supercell that we have. And probably has the most potential, but will it live up to that is the question, because we just saw that storm down in Kansas overperform. And look at this thing, though. Wow. Yeah, so the inflow area is now starting to become a lot more free. We do have this
New severe thunderstorm warning.
down here to kind of deal with. We'll see how that interacts as it moves off to the northeast, if that kind of ruins things for this storm. But really, I mean, this is a massive thunderstorm here. It's got that bean shape to it. It's got that hook shape. So once this rain here, the stratiform rain, kind of clears out of the base, we'll see what happens with it. All right, we do want to keep an eye on this storm up here near Harlan. Definitely got a little something of a hook trying to form right there. Definitely want to keep an eye on that. Doesn't look impressive on velocity, though. Again, I think these storms up here to the north might be just a bit elevated. Go back down to the Westmoreland storm. And now we kind of got to watch the southern end of this thing, which is more traditionally where a tornado would develop, but we saw one develop kind of on the back edge earlier. So, yeah, that Westmoreland tornado, well, let this load again, kind of formed on the back of the supercell, which was very strange. It kind of formed back here. Typically, you'd see a tornado form down here, but this Westmoreland tornado kind of formed over here on the back edge of that. And now we're starting to see a more classic kind of look there. And oh, all right. So now, guys, with this Centralia storm, look at the hook here with this storm. Very strong hook echo there. Big time inflow coming into the storm there. So they have issued a new tornado warning here. And that's for Nemaha County in northeastern Kansas, as well as east central Marshall County in northeastern Kansas until 5:30. Hail up to 2 inches in diameter, and this thunderstorm is also capable of producing a tornado. So that's tornado warning. Includes the cities of
New
Centralia,
severe thunderstorm warning.
includes the city of Goff, Kansas as well. Includes Highway 9 there, Highway 63 near Goff, Highway 62 Corning also. So we have to watch these Kansas storms, I think, pretty closely here. Oh, yeah, look at that. Pretty convincing couplet there. If a tornado's not on the ground there to the southwest of Centralia, Kansas, then I would say it's probably developing.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
So watching this couplet just south of Vermilion, you got winds kind of coming down like this. You got winds coming out into the inflow there, and then you got lots of rotation right there with that. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Pretty strong couplet there with that. And this is probably the storm we need to focus the heaviest on, because that's gate to gate. That's a tornado, guys. Tornado on the ground. Yep, that's a tornado on the ground there on Wildcat Road, 56th Road. There, the intersection of 31st Road and 56th Road, B Road, 48th Road area, 64th Road, Valley Road. Here in Kansas, going toward the Baileyville Road. They're just south of Vermilion and just to the southwest of Centralia, Kansas. This is going to get pretty close to Corning and Goff, Kansas. It's not a big tornado, very compact circulation right there, but that is definitely a tornado on the ground. See if it's got any kind of debris signature here that we can see. Oh, maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit of a debris signature showing up right there with that. We'll have to see what the next frame looks like. But definitely on velocity, we're seeing quite an impressive signature right there. And look at that. That's a tornado, guys. Yeah. It's a tornado on the ground. Moving toward Corning, Kansas. Still radar indicated.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
According to the warning here. But I would bet anything that there's a tornado here. Right there in the area I just circled, and that's Centralia. You're good. Looks like it's going to move south of you, but you're definitely getting in on that hail core and whatnot with that. Go back to reflectivity just to kind of look at the hook on this storm, and you can see that classic hook echo right there wrapping into the storm. Very, very obvious that there's a tornado here with this. Yep. So, and that has now gone observed. Emergency management confirmed. And this is also
new tornado warning.
Baseball-sized hail. So that's a tornado on the ground, like I was saying even before they issued the confirmed tornado warning, but now it is a confirmed tornado warning headed toward Goff, Kansas, if it holds together, and Corning, Kansas. It's in a rural area, thankfully, so hopefully it's not hitting any farmsteads or anything like that. Let's go to the correlation with it. It does have some debris signatures. I don't want to say for sure, but a couple of little areas there, blues. And that's probably a tornado for sure. And again, guys, this is observed
New severe thunderstorm warning.
by emergency managers. And even before that, I'd called it out that there was a tornado on the ground. So, yep, that's the only storm I'm seeing that's looking dangerous as far as tornado potential. I mean, there's a lot of large hail, obviously, and that's dangerous as well. And now it's looking like it's dying down. So, pretty quick spin up there, but nonetheless, could have been a strong tornado there for a minute. It's not completely lifted, but that last scan showed a little bit of a downtick in the rotation. It's still there, still probably loosely on the ground. Could recycle, so we have to keep that in mind. So if you're in Corning or Goff, just because this has
new severe thunderstorm warning
for the moment, definitely don't want to leave your shelter by any means. If you're in Corning or Goff, Kansas, you need to be still seeking shelter. And it does look like it might be trying to cycle again. At least according to reflectivity here. Look at this hook, guys. Big time hook.
new severe thunderstorm warning.
So yeah, I think that's probably going to cycle again. It's probably still on the ground. It may have just went through a slight weakening phase. But yeah, it's still there.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
Still looks like it's on the ground there. I'm not seeing any other tornado warnings. anywhere. So kind of want to stay on this storm, because this one does have a tornado on the ground with it. I'll kind of look at the other storms.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
Man, lots of severe thunderstorm warnings. That storm up there near Greenfield, Iowa, starting to get a better inflow. Better area of inflow there. Could go tornado warn soon up there. Wouldn't surprise me. Gonna look at all of these storms real quick, just with my phone. Yeah, so I'd say the two storms that I'm most concerned with are the one we're looking at here, which has a tornado on the ground, still moving toward Corning. If you're in Corning, you need to be seeking shelter. And also that storm up near Greenfield, moving toward Creston, Iowa. So Corning, Kansas, Creston, Iowa. Those are the two kind of areas, Cromwell, Iowa, Iowa, and then, of course, Corning and Goff, Kansas. And eventually it will be getting toward Wetmore, Kansas, and Grenada, Kansas as well. And we want to keep an eye on all of these, though. I want to go down the line here with my phone. That Westmoreland tornado. It says here that in Westmoreland, damage to residential structures on the west side of Westmoreland has been reported. So that was with that tornado that we were on top of a little bit earlier there in Westmoreland. And now, visual confirmation of the tornado with the storm here that we're looking at south of Vermilion. So 2 tornadoes so far have occurred. One in Westmoreland that did structural damage to residential areas there. And then this tornado here that we're looking at, and that was located southeast of Vermilion. Right now it's over rural areas, it looks like. Let me see if I can find any residential structures here in this area. It looks pretty barren out here. I mean, there are a couple of houses, but luckily until it gets into Corning, doesn't look like there will be
New severe thunderstorm warning.
anything that it will hit. And again, this is kind of ramping up, going back down right now. It's kind of in a down phase, but I'd still say it's on the ground. Could be trying to lift, but we'll see. Reflectivity still shows a pretty impressive hook here with the storm. Switch over to that real quick.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, those are in Texas. Pecos and Terrell County in Texas for those severe thunderstorm warnings. And then, yeah, you can see pretty decent hook here. Right here on the end is where you'd get your tornado. So definitely dealing with a tornado on the ground there with that. And these two supercells are looking quite dominant. This one here, and also this one here in northeastern Kansas. So Topeka, right now, if you're in Topeka, this tornado warn storm is up near Seneca. Gonna miss you off to the north. This big storm here might try to curve down to the north side of Topeka, but the one you're really looking at is this storm right here. and maybe this storm right here. These are the two that you're worried about in Topeka the most. And if you're north of Topeka, you could be worried about this storm right here. But the tornado warned storm moving more toward the St. Joseph, Missouri area. As far as the highest populated Atchison, Kansas as well, if it can hold. And, you know, this environment isn't really conducive for long track tornadoes. More of these quicker tornadoes that could happen. Still observed on the tornado warning here. Emergency management confirmed it. And also, just by the radar, I would say there's a tornado on the ground still. It's going to get dangerously close to Corning. If you're in Corning right now.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
Pretty small town there. But you can definitely see right there. Pretty small tornado, so you got to get unlucky to get hit by one of these. But Corning it's dangerously close. And it looks like it's trying to cycle a little bit. May not be on the ground anymore there. But still looks impressive on reflectivity. So you got this big hook coming around, pointing right at Corning. So I would just be in my basement in Corning. Just let that go over, even if it doesn't produce a tornado. Do want to go up here and check on this storm near Creston, Iowa. Got to keep an eye on it because I think this one is getting ready to try to drop a tornado. Take a look at it here on reflectivity, and it's got a big inflow area there. I don't know. It's had some wonky attempts so far, so we'll see. We'll see what it does. These storms down in Kansas, though, these are the ones that have been doing work. Kind of producing tornadoes. Had a couple so far. 2 in Kansas. 1 in Westmoreland and 1 out in the middle of this field here to the southeast of Vermilion, south of Centralia, west of Corning area of Kansas. It does appear to be somewhat cycling.
New severe thunderstorm warning.
All right, guys, continuing to watch this storm here to the west of Goff and Corning. Here in Corning, there is rotation. I can't say it's for sure on the ground, but definitely want to be in your safe spot there in Corning. See if that ramps up again before it gets into town. Seems like these little towns haven't had good luck here today in Kansas. Westmoreland earlier was hit by a tornado there. Structural damage was reported with that. 70-mile-per-hour wind, 2-inch hail there with this storm that is moving through Emmett, Kansas. So that's a pretty significant storm. And again, the storm that looks the most impressive is the one that we're kind of tracking there. Let's look at this storm up near Creston. Iowa. Because we do want to check in on this, everyone. Oh my goodness. Look at the hail on that. North of Orient, Iowa. I have to pull up Brandon Cope Extreme. Because he's right in the middle of that. I bet he's getting completely blasted by that hail.